Managers must be sensitive to trends in the evolution of a culture in order to maintain their effectiveness in the workplace. Cultural differences matter in international business because firms never operate in a cultural vacuum. When a company enters a foreign market, it inevitably interacts with local values, norms, and ways of thinking. As a result, understanding and adapting to the local culture becomes a fundamental requirement for international companies, not an optional add-on. Firms that ignore cultural context often face misunderstandings, resistance from local stakeholders, and ineffective management practices. A key concept here is cross-cultural literacy, which refers to the ability to understand how cultural differences, both across countries and within a single country, shape the way business is conducted. Culture influences how people communicate, how decisions are made, how authority is perceived, and how trust is built. When managers possess strong cross-cultural literacy, they are better equipped to interpret behavior correctly and to respond in ways that are culturally appropriate. Cross-cultural literacy is therefore closely linked to business success. Managers who understand cultural differences can negotiate more effectively, manage multicultural teams more smoothly, and reduce conflicts arising from misinterpretation. In contrast, a lack of cultural understanding can lead to costly mistakes, damaged relationships, and failed international ventures. There is also a clear relationship between culture and the costs of doing business in a particular country or region. Cultural norms influence how long it takes to build relationships, how contracts are enforced, and how much reliance is placed on formal rules versus personal trust. In some cultures, extensive relationship building may increase time and coordination costs, while in others, strong legal and bureaucratic systems may raise compliance and administrative costs. Culture, therefore, has direct economic implications for firms. Finally, multinational enterprises can act as agents of cultural change. Through their operations, management practices, and products, they often introduce new values and consumption patterns into host societies. At the same time, these firms must adapt their strategies to local cultural expectations. The global expansion of companies such as McDonald's illustrates this two-way interaction. While they spread standardized business models and lifestyles, they also modify their offerings to align with local cultural preferences. LO1. Explain what is meant by the culture of a society. While culture is a characteristic of society as a whole, it shapes individual behavior by identifying appropriate and inappropriate forms of human interaction. In a sense, culture is the collective programming of the mind which distinguishes the members of one human group from another. Folkways are the routines, conventions of everyday life, but generally have little moral significance. Examples would be dress, eating habits, and social graces. An outsider can easily be forgiven for being ignorant of a folkway. Timeliness is a good example. One way to reinforce the understanding of this concept is to ask individuals in the class what time they would choose to arrive at a party if the party invitation specified that the party starts at 8 p.m. It is not uncommon for different individuals in the class to have widely varying positions on the right time to arrive for an 8 p.m. party. Mores are serious standards of behavior. The term comes from the Latin mos, customs, and although mores are fewer in number than folkways, they are more coercive. Negative mores are taboos, usually supported by religious or philosophical sanctions. Whereas folkways guide human conduct in the more mundane areas of life. Mores tend to control those aspects connected with sex, the family, or religion. Mores can vary greatly between countries. What in one country may be viewed as an innocent flirt in another may constitute a serious affront to someone's dignity or even harassment. While it is acceptable, and even expected, to consume alcohol with business associates in Japan, where evening business contacts often border on drunkenness, such actions would be disallowed in the United Arab Emirates. The relationship between culture, society, and the nation-state is not a simple one-to-one match. A society does not always align neatly with national borders, and cultural boundaries often extend beyond political boundaries. Nation-states are political constructions, created through history, law, and governance. As a result, a single nation-state may contain multiple cultures, reflecting differences in ethnicity, language, religion, or regional traditions. At the same time, one culture can span several nation-states. People in different countries may share similar cultural values, norms, and ways of life despite being governed by separate political systems. This distinction is important for international business, because firms cannot assume that operating in one country means dealing with only one culture, nor that the same culture will be confined to a single national market. Culture is shaped by a set of interrelated forces rather than by a single factor. At the center are cultural norms and value systems, which guide how people think, behave, and interact in society. These norms and values are continuously formed and reinforced by several key determinants. Religion plays a fundamental role by influencing moral standards, attitudes toward work, consumption, and social responsibility. In many societies, religious beliefs shape views on authority, gender roles, and acceptable business practices. Social structure determines how individuals relate to one another, including class systems, family structures, and group orientation. Whether a society emphasizes hierarchy or equality, individualism or collectivism, strongly affects workplace relationships and management styles. Language is more than a communication tool. It reflects how people categorize the world and express meaning. Language shapes negotiation styles, communication patterns, and even how problems are framed and solved in business contexts. Education contributes to culture by transmitting knowledge, skills, and social values across generations. Educational systems influence attitudes toward innovation, critical thinking, risk-taking, and long-term planning. Finally, political philosophy and economic philosophy shape cultural expectations about authority, freedom, competition, and the role of the state versus the market. Together, these philosophies influence how societies view entrepreneurship, regulation, and corporate responsibility. Taken together, these factors interact dynamically to form a society's culture, rather than operating in isolation. Country focus. Breaking India's caste system explores the caste system in India that still influences society today, particularly in the rural parts of the country. A social structure refers to the basic way a society is organized. It defines how people relate to one another and how social roles and responsibilities are arranged. Two key aspects are particularly important. First is the extent to which the individual or the group is considered the basic unit of society. In some cultures, individuals are expected to act independently, while in others, group harmony and collective interests are emphasized. Second is the degree of social stratification, meaning how clearly a society is divided into social classes or castes. This affects access to opportunities, authority, and social mobility, and has direct implications for management and workplace relationships. Load 3. Identify the business and economic implications of differences in culture. A group consists of two or more individuals who share a sense of identity and interact with one another in structured ways, based on common expectations about behavior. These expectations guide how members communicate, cooperate, and resolve conflicts. Individuals typically belong to multiple groups at the same time, such as families, work teams, social circles, or recreational groups. Each group plays a role in shaping attitudes, norms, and behavior. Importantly, societies differ in how much value they place on the group versus the individual. In some cultures, group membership strongly influences decision-making and identity, while in others, personal autonomy and individual choice are emphasized. In many Western societies, there is a strong emphasis on the individual rather than the group. Personal achievement and individual performance are highly valued, and success is often measured by personal accomplishments. This focus on the individual helps explain the dynamism of economies such as the United States, where innovation, entrepreneurship, and risk-taking are encouraged. High levels of individual initiative contribute to economic flexibility and rapid business growth. However, this orientation also has limitations. Strong individualism can lead to lower levels of company loyalty, as employees are more willing to change jobs to pursue personal opportunities. It may also reduce the incentive to accumulate firm-specific knowledge over the long term. Within organizations, Individualism can foster competition between employees rather than collaboration, making team building more challenging. In addition, frequent mobility may weaken the development of strong internal networks and long-term relationships within firms. In a social setting, Asian employees often say they work for Sony, while a Western employee may say she is an electrical engineer. In Asia, the worth of an individual is more linked to the success of the group rather than individual achievement. The class of a person may be very important in some hiring and promotion decisions, particularly in sales organizations where the person will be dealing with customers that may also come from a particular class. Why is social stratification important? The social stratification of a society is significant if it affects the operation of business organizations. In cultures where there is a great deal of consciousness over the class of others, the way individuals from different classes work together, i.e. management and labor, may be very prescribed and strained in some cultures, i.e. Britain, or have almost no significance in others, i.e. Japan. Class consciousness is a condition where people tend to perceive themselves in terms of their class background, and this shapes their relationships with others. The mobility permitted by culture affects whether individuals can move up in strata, and can limit the types of jobs and education available. In the US, individuals are very mobile. Anyone can become president. In Britain there is less mobility, and the caste system in India used to limit mobility, despite the laws against it. The effects of the caste system in India still exist today, and are especially prevalent in certain rural areas. Religion can be understood as a system of shared beliefs and rituals that relate to the sacred and provide meaning, moral guidance, and a sense of purpose in human life. Because of this, religion strongly influences values, attitudes, and patterns of behavior within societies. Globally, a small number of religious traditions have had a particularly significant impact on social life and business practices. Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism are the four major religions that shape norms, ethics, and institutions across many societies. In addition, Confucianism, while not a religion in the strict sense, plays an important role in shaping ethical behavior, social relationships, and cultural values in many parts of Asia. Its emphasis on harmony, hierarchy, duty, and respect for authority continues to influence managerial practices and business conduct in the region. This map illustrates the geographical distribution of the world's major religions, showing how religious traditions are closely linked to particular regions and historical trajectories. Christianity is predominant in Europe, the Americas, and parts of sub-Saharan Africa, reflecting patterns of European expansion and colonization. Islam dominates North Africa, the Middle East, and large parts of South and Southeast Asia, where religious principles continue to shape daily life, legal systems, and ethical norms. Hinduism is concentrated primarily in India and Nepal, where it has deeply influenced social organization and cultural practices. Buddhism is most prevalent in East and Southeast Asia, emphasizing values such as moderation, harmony, and detachment, which often translate into distinctive attitudes toward work and consumption. Confucianism, Taoism, and Shinto, often overlapping with Buddhism, are influential in East Asia, particularly in China, Korea, and Japan. These traditions shape views on hierarchy, loyalty, and social harmony. From an international business perspective, this distribution matters because religious traditions influence consumer behavior, working practices, holidays, ethical expectations, and managerial relationships across different regions of the world. Ethical systems refer to a set of moral principles and values that guide and shape human behavior. They provide standards for judging what is considered right or wrong, fair or unfair, in both personal and professional contexts. In many societies, ethics and religion are closely intertwined. Religious beliefs often serve as a foundation for ethical norms, influencing attitudes toward honesty, responsibility, justice, and acceptable business conduct. For example, Christian ethics and Islamic ethics offer moral frameworks that affect decision-making, contractual behavior, and social obligations. As a result, understanding ethical systems is essential for international managers to operate across cultures shaped by different religious and moral traditions. Load 3. Identify the business and economic implications of differences in culture. At the turn of the century, Weber suggested that it was the Protestant work ethic, focus on hard work, wealth creation, and frugality, that was the driving force of capitalism. This is the most widely practiced religion in the world. Approximately 20% of the world's people identify themselves as Christians. Christianity grew out of Judaism and has monotheistic beliefs. Christianity can be subdivided into three separate organizations: the Orthodox Church, the Roman Catholic Church, Protestants, which is an umbrella for several denominations. Several sociologists have argued that Protestants have made a significant economic impact. Max Weber commented that business leaders and owners of capital, as well as the higher grades of skilled labor, and even more the higher technically and commercially trained personnel of modern enterprises, are overwhelmingly Protestant. That Protestant ethics emphasize the importance of hard work and wealth creation, for the glory of God, and frugality, abstinence from worldly pleasures. That the combination of hard work and the accumulation of capital, which could be used to finance investment and expansion, paved the way for the development of capitalism in Western Europe and subsequently in the United States. The central principle of Islam is that there is but the one true omnipotent God. Islam requires unconditional acceptance of the uniqueness, power, and authority of God and the understanding that the objective of life is to fulfill the dictates of His will in the hope of admission to paradise. According to Islam, worldly gain and temporal power are an illusion. Other major principles of Islam include honoring and respecting parents, respecting the rights of others, being generous but not a squanderer, avoiding killing except for justifiable causes, not committing adultery, dealing justly and equitably with others, being of pure heart and mind, safeguarding the possessions of orphans, being humble and unpretentious. The Quran establishes some explicit economic principles, many of which are pro-free enterprise. The Quran speaks approvingly of free enterprise and of earning legitimate profit through trade and commerce. The Prophet Muhammad was once a trader. The protection of the right to private property is also embedded within Islam. Islam is critical of those who earn profit through the exploitation of others. Given the Islamic proclivity to favor market-based systems, Muslim countries are likely to be receptive to international businesses as long as those businesses behave in a manner that is consistent with Islamic ethics. Hinduism is practiced primarily on the Indian subcontinent and is deeply embedded in the social and cultural life of the region. It places strong emphasis on spiritual growth and personal development, often encouraging restraint from excessive material or physical desires. Within this belief system, individuals are traditionally valued more for their spiritual achievements than for material success. This perspective can influence attitudes toward work, status, and ambition. From a business and management viewpoint, Hinduism is also linked to the caste system, which has historically shaped social roles and occupational mobility. As a result, promotion or the assignment of new responsibilities may be viewed as less important or, in some cases, socially constrained by caste-related norms, affecting workplace expectations and management practices. Buddhism has approximately 350 million followers worldwide and places strong emphasis on spiritual development and the pursuit of enlightenment, rather than material success in this world. Unlike some belief systems, Buddhism does not emphasize wealth creation or entrepreneurial achievement as central life goals. Instead, it encourages moderation, detachment from excessive desire, and inner balance. Importantly, Buddhism does not support a caste system. Individuals are generally viewed as having moral and spiritual equality, which allows for a degree of social mobility. In organizational settings, this perspective supports cooperation across social classes and more flexible working relationships. The close ties between Japanese auto companies and their suppliers, called keiretsus, have been an important ingredient in the Japanese success in the auto industry. They have facilitated loyalty, reciprocal obligations, and honesty. In countries where these relationships are more adversarial and not bound by these same values, the costs of doing business are probably higher. Management focus. DMG Shanghai underscores the importance of Guangxi in getting business done in China. The language of a society allows it to communicate but also directs the attention of people towards certain features of the world and human interactions. A good example is how the Inuit have 24 words for snow, but no word for the overall concept. Language helps describe how different people see the world differently. The language of a society allows it to communicate but also directs the attention of people towards certain features of the world and human interactions. A good example is how the Inuit have 24 words for snow, but no word for the overall concept. Language helps describe how different people see the world differently. The knowledge base. Training and educational opportunities available to a country's citizens can also give it a competitive advantage in the market and make it a more or less attractive place for expanding business. It is easier to start operations in a nation with a trained workforce than in a nation where time-consuming and costly training is necessary. Education plays a central role in culture by transmitting values and norms across generations. Through subjects such as literature, history, and science, societies pass on shared beliefs and expectations, including values like patriotism, hard work, and gratitude. At the same time, education can also transform cultural values. By promoting ideas such as scientific thinking, democratic principles, or human control over nature, education can gradually reshape how individuals view society, authority, and progress. The relationship is therefore two-way. While education influences culture, culture also shapes education by determining what knowledge, skills, and values are considered important and worthy of being taught.